and I'd like to convene this meeting, the special meeting of the Engineering and Environmental Committee for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District for July 23rd, 2024. Jen, would you please take roll?
Yes. Ken Landy.
Yes, I'm here.
Jeff Hill.
Here.
Chair Smalley.
Here and attending remotely.
And Jeff Schmelter is absent.
Okay. The oral communications portion of the meeting, for any members of the public that want to bring up an item that is not on the agenda but is within the purview of this committee, now is your opportunity for that. Does anybody wish to bring something up?
I see no hands.
I see nobody online wishing to speak, and I see nobody at the podium. So let's proceed then. New business. First item, 3A, is the project priority list. Ryan, who is presenting and discussing this?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to have Heather start this one off and then followed by Garrett. And then I will say maybe a few words at the end.
Good afternoon, committee. Heather Ippoliti, consultant with RGS. The action before you this afternoon is to receive the report and consider recommending to the Board of Directors to approve the updated 2024 District Priority Projects List. This is all related to a proposed debt issue. And what I'm going to do is provide you the background to that debt issue and why. So first, the need for a debt issue to fund capital projects was anticipated in the development of the financial plan models that were used in the development of the updated water rates adopted in February. And you say, why were they part of that plan? Well, I'm going to lay out a couple items. First, a FEMA revenue shortfall. The 23-25 biennial budget assumed receipt of just over 16.3 million in FEMA reimbursements. The consultant hired by the district to assist with FEMA claim filing estimates that the district will receive 6.9 million in the next 13 months. Well, technically in the next 12 months at this point, during combined with the 2 fiscal years, bringing the 24-month total from FEMA to 7.5 million. This amounts to approximately 8.8 million in a revenue shortfall over the 2-year budget period. The second item is FEMA projects overall. There was over 12 million in FEMA funded projects included in the 23-25 budget. The district must initially cover the costs and then seek reimbursement after completion. FEMA projects are not fully reimbursed. Some projects 75%, others only 90%. There are insufficient reserve nor current unspent bond proceeds to cover these costs. Speaking of unspent bond proceeds, as of May 31, 2024, there was 4.4 million in unspent proceeds from debts issued in 2019 and 2021. The remaining unspent bond proceeds will be fully exhausted with projects coming to a close this month and next. The other important reason for this debt is the Brackenbrae Forest Springs grant. The timing of this funding is also crucial. When I say funding, I'm talking about the debt proceeds for the ability to protect, utilize other grant funds. While the CIP includes 2.7 million in grant funds for the Brackenbrae and Forest Springs consolidation, this amount only covers a portion of the project costs. As approved at the July 18th board meeting, an estimated 1.4 million in additional funding is needed to advance the first phase of the consolidation and fully utilize the grant. The grant funding agency has provisionally given a deadline extension to June of 25 to allow the project to progress. But meeting this deadline will require that the necessary funds to complete the project are available by the end of August or early September. With the filing of the voter initiative, the district's capacity to support an additional debt is reduced to approximately 12 million from the originally planned for 12 million in the rate study. At the June 6th board meeting, the board approved the selection of an experienced financing team to provide the necessary guidance and expertise to move forward on the proposed financing process. Tomorrow, July 24th, the Budget and Finance Committee will receive a presentation from the financing team with August 1 scheduled for the board's consideration of approval of the issuance of the bonds and all of the required documentation to complete the financing. While the bond-related legal documents allow the proceeds to be used for any capital projects to the water system, and the projects don't need to be determined prior to closing the financial transaction, staff is requesting this committee to provide their input on the proposed priority project listing before it is presented to the board for their approval. At this point, I'll turn the presentation over to the district's engineering manager for his presentation of the proposed priority project listing.
Thank you, Heather. So
Can I raise a question just before you start? Can you
um,
tell,
Uh, why don't we let Garrett through first?
okay,
Because I think his portion is generally short at this point,
okay,
and then we can transition to questions.
okay,
okay, so
Good, Jared.
the district engineering staff was tasked with developing a priority projects list. At the top of the district's priorities is reestablishing the raw water line for the P-Vine supply. The other raw water line that the district needs to reestablish is the 5-mile water line. Although we're going to use lessons learned from P-Vine to influence our strategy in building the 5-mile raw water pipeline. So while segments of the 5-mile are included on the project list, including the Sweetwater, the Clear Creek, and Cool Creek, those have not been prioritized in the top of our list. Other priorities were given to projects where we have grant money that has a timeline where we have to spend the money or we'll lose it. So those projects got bumped up right to the top. The other priority we have are FEMA reimbursed projects. So these are projects where if the district funds the project, completes the construction, we can receive back a percentage of the costs. And then there's some couple projects on here that are related to deferred maintenance, tank recoating. And I'd like to add, we do not include Brookdale tank and Blair tank in this list, and they should have been. And that's all I have at this time.
Okay,
Chair, if I may, I wanted to just give a few closing.
sure. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Chair Smalley. So one thing I wanted to point out here is, as we mentioned, we are going out for debt financing. We are adding a new project to our previous CIP list. That's the Bracken Ray Forest Springs. It wasn't in there. This reshuffling of projects for the financing, unlike our previous financing, we are not locked into this list that we're giving you, meaning that we could add more projects to this. The current financing isn't, the financing we're working on, I've asked a number of times to make sure that I heard them loud and clear that no, we are not locked into this, but in the interest of giving you the most information that we have, we want to also let you know that we are reordering our priority list, and this is what we are recommending is a priority for the reasons we mentioned. But it's not to say that if another project came along, we couldn't add it and we still could use that money. Of course, we are limited to how much debt financing we can go out for, which is the $12 million. That means that of this 40 million plus list, and even if we add some, we're only going to be able to do 12 million of it with the money that we get. Unless, of course, we get grants, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I just wanted to add that piece to it so that it's clear. So thank you, Chair.
Okay,
Okay, my first question has to do with the first presentation just before yours. There was a lot of numbers thrown out in that presentation. How much money do we have to spend?
The debt financing as of right now, and again, we won't know the final numbers until we go out, but it's about $12 million. That is how
Okay.
much the debt financing will be, is 12 million.
All right. And the list that was just presented shows 14.5 million. How are we expecting to cover the 2.5 million difference? Okay, is a question I have. I also have a question. We have these estimates to close. What I don't see here is what the original budgets were for these individual items, what amount we have spent of the budget amount, and what percentage of the tasks have been actually completed. If we spent 80% of the money, but we only completed 60% of the task, is that remaining dollar amount valid? And switching it the other way around, if we only spent 50% and we completed 80%, is that an overestimate of what is needed on each of these? And so it's the validity of these numbers that may be valid. I'm not saying they're not, but nothing in what was presented to us explains that.
Okay, thank you. I'll answer your first concern, if I may. I agree. We certainly, when we bring this to the board, we should have a couple more columns in here, maybe 2 or 3 that address the original budget, how much it's been spent, and the completion of the project. To your first question, where you say we listed the priority projects as 14.5, and I'm showing, but I'm also showing a full list of over 40 million, as I mentioned. What I said in the beginning was we have 12 million, and so that's what we will spend. And these other projects will be awaiting additional funding. So it's like we're not able to build those projects right now, but we are listing them as, we are giving you the list. And when funding comes in, this is still our thinking at this point of how we're going to address them when there's more funding.
Understood that, but even the 8 items on the top of the priority list exceed the 12 million
Well,
as the estimate.
right, there's still priority lists, and yes, of those 8, we're probably gonna get 7 of them, 6 of them, maybe only 5 of them built with the 12 million.
Are these listed in order of priority, or they just happen to be they're all the same top priority? If you follow what I'm getting at.
Yes. I would say that they are in their priority order, but that can reshuffle depending on available conditions. Sometimes
Things change.
things change.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
okay. Ken, if you're done, Jeff, what questions do you have?
I am happy with Ken's questions, but I do have another one here. Going down the list of ways here, the Lion slide repair at $10 million. When did that slide take place? Because I've been on the board a couple of years now and was on a committee for a better part of a year, and that always seems to be on the list and never seems to have anything done on it. So could somebody tell me what happened and what are we doing? In the meantime,
Sure, yeah, so the original slide was in 2017.
Yep.
And then the slide was reactivated recently in these atmospheric river events we've had.
mhm,
Operations staff have put base rock and paved so we can access the Lion treatment plant, which is a critical piece of infrastructure for the water district.
mhm,
Initially, we did a geotechnical investigation, and the recommendation was to build 3 secant pile walls to the tune of $17 million. This was not considered feasible financially,
mhm.
although it is a FEMA project, so we would get reimbursed a percentage of whatever money we do spend. It's my understanding we didn't have 17 million for this one project.
Yep.
Josh Wolf explored an alternative project. My understanding he has FEMA approval for an alternative route, which would be a brand new road accessing the lower level of the Lion treatment complex where the tanks are, routed around Big Steel Tank.
Mhm.
We have hired a design firm, Sandus, for that project. They have provided some drawings that are listed in their scope of work. Their estimate right now is around $8 million
Mhm.
to build the alternative route. So of $12 million, that would be a substantial portion of that for one road if we wanted to pursue that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we use all our money on that project or most of our money on that project. I'm just looking at this and says I've been involved in this for 2.5 years or so, and I keep seeing it and I don't see any explanation of what's actually, if anything's been done and why. So
If I could, I'll give you a kind of a high level view of it too, is even if you look at what my view was, looking at the price tag and looking at what it would get us, because you can get up there and it's not like that's.
that was kind of one of the things I was curious about.
It's not like we're dangling on a cliff every time we try to get up there. It's really, yes, there's a hill failure, but if you were standing there looking at it, you wouldn't think it's so severe that
Mhm,
we're gonna lose the whole hill
mhm,
anytime soon. However, you also look at the fact that no matter what, even when we get the 75% from FEMA, and then we get, 75% of the balance, which still means we're kicking in, 6% of the total cost.
mhm.
That's still 600,000 out of a $10 million price tag. We've got a lot of other projects that we're managing that I just see as far more important right now that deal directly with supply, like getting our supply back, getting grant funding, keeping the grant money projects moving. So yes, it's taken a backseat to that. It's not being ignored because what I keep asking is, where's the $2 million solution? Or if we paid $1 million,
Mhm.
and yes, it failed in 10 years, that's still cheaper than spending 10 million now and having the same thing happen where we're turning around and fixing it again.
So
Hopefully that makes sense.
I understand what you're saying. It makes sense to me.
Okay,
I was just commenting that this stands out, considering the amount, it stands out like a sore thumb, and I'm saying, why is this always there and what are we doing?
right. Why are we kicking the can down the road? I will say that my experience with public works projects and having these capital improvement projects lists, there's a lot of times these lists, the priorities change, and yes, that thing needs to be done, but other ones
Yep.
present themselves as being more immediate and pass it constantly.
Yep.
And it's, some of it's, I don't want to say it's like always that way, but it is kind of the nature of the beast. So.
Okay, I have one other question here. Let me see here if I can find it here. I don't see, do I not see the Felton Heights tank on this list?
It's part of the DW, it's number 2.
Oh, okay,
So it's wrapped all into that one.
got it.
Yes.
Because that's another one that's been sort of hanging out there for several years and it looks like we're finally closing in on getting rights to actually build it and
Yes.
land permission and stuff like that. So I just wanted to make sure that was in the list.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes, that's high priority, that one, because there's $4.5 million of state money.
Yeah.
Versus the 1.5 that we're putting into it, it's a good deal for us to get all those tanks.
And we've put an enormous amount of time and effort into working with the neighbors and the community there to get them to agree to the design and the concept. So
Yes, also
we don't want
correct.
that to go stale.
So this committee should also know, but just in as we got nearly a $500,000 check from the DWR already on this project for the Blue Ridge tank, which was
Good.
done ahead of the grant, but the way grants work is they'll pay you back for work already done before the actual award comes in, but I was just shown a check yesterday, 400 and change, really $500,000.
That's good.
So they pay promptly,
Mhm.
so good to know. I'll stay
Okay,
standing.
Further questions, Jeff?
Yeah, one other question, comment. Is this going to be on the agenda for the next meeting, or is it the meeting after?
My feeling is we can put it on the agenda. Part of that is something that you can discuss. This could be part of the discussion. And as I pointed out, we are bringing the financing.
Yeah.
This project list could get rearranged and still could be added to, and I will point that out. We're bringing it up in the contents of the financing
Mhm.
to let people know that it's like, yes, this is the list of projects as we see them now. But we will point out that unlike other financing situations, we have a lot more flexibility than we do with our last financing.
Okay.
And part of it is it's also, I mean, if there was a lot of, depending on the feedback we get from you, that may change that notion.
Mhm.
But if the committee's okay with it, yes, we would move it along. That's the intent.
Thank you.
The thing is that they can't make a motion to move it today because
Correct.
of the location, yeah,
Yes.
it's just discussion.
Yes, but you can receive our feedback today on it.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Based on what Heather said, it sounds like as of August or September, we have no more money from the other two loan packages that we have. And once we wrap up the projects that we're currently working on, do we not start anything else at that point? Or what's planned for construction until we get until we know whether we have more loan funds to work with?
Brian, may I take that one?
Oh, sure. Please
Thank
do.
you.
Thank you.
Director Smalley, if the debt proceeds, if the board is able to approve the financing
Mm-hmm.
on August 1,
Right.
then the financing schedule is to actually issue the debt by the end of August. And as soon as that happens, there will be funding. But
Okay.
yes, we are essentially in a holding pattern for project funding.
Okay.
Because the current debt proceeds will pay off the most of the current projects.
Right.
And then the project funding is other than grant funded projects, and I'm talking non-FEMA, because FEMA takes a year, 2 years to get reimbursed. We have to essentially have another funding source other than
Yes.
FEMA for those projects. I'm sorry, I'm probably telling you things you already know. I'm just
Yes.
wanting to make sure that
Right.
all listeners do understand that. So yes, we are If for some reason the board chooses not to go forward in August, we are truly on hold. The district is on hold for their project plan.
For any further construction aspects
Correct,
at this point. Okay, all right.
correct.
Brian, Garrett, what was the criteria that you were using to get these 8 projects that you have listed to the top of the list versus some of the ones that are on this list and are part of the 43 million that aren't higher in it? Did you say gallons of water that we might either get from that or save from that? The number of residents, or what criteria were you using to value the various projects here?
I'll take a stab at this. I don't know, Garrett, maybe you have something to add, but essentially, we did mention the grant funding and FEMA. Of course, there are other FEMA projects. But certainly supply lines is number one, because that affects pretty much the entire population, affects all connections.
Yes.
So Peavine and 5 Mile are certainly high up there. And then the other ones, the immediacies, because we have grant deadlines, the DWR grant, et cetera. Some of those are even behind schedule, and we're moving as fast as we can to make sure that we keep that grant money. And the other bits is, we have certain, like the tank recoating and so forth. Those have a large impact on supply and fire suppression, so they're high priorities as well, and they're deferred maintenance that needs to happen. As I think was pointed out, the longer we wait, the more expensive it is to do that. Certain issues could certainly push these around, like I said, but the DWR tanks, I mean, I know some of those tanks, they seep water as we speak. They're oozing water, and they're old redwood tanks. And
right.
Clearly, when you look at the top 3, supply and more supply and storage, pump house hardening again, grant the deadline. Forest Springs Brackenbury, same thing. There's a deadline there.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. So there you
go. The simple column that you have for cost of priority projects that then totals 14.6. Brian, you've indicated you think you need to expand this some before it goes to the board. Yes, I think that definitely needs to happen. As an example, I know that the second item on here, the DWR tanks, that 5 million or most of that 5 million is a grant, correct?
Correct. So
the district, although we're spending the money initially, I thought that the state grants are a fairly rapid turnaround on them being able to cycle the money back to us once we are showing work is completed.
Yes, in this case, it appears that they're actually very responsive. Sometimes the time lag is 6 months, but you're correct. I mean, looking at this, you're correct. We can add detail of the total amount, which actually I would correct this and say it's 6 million, because we're putting in 1.5 million and the state's giving us 4.5. And then the progress is, well, we already built Blue Ridge and we just got $500,000 back from the state. So the other columns that reflect this is, I guess, what you're saying, if I understand.
I think some to be able to separate this out, and as a point, you're mentioning Blue Ridge, is that 5 tank replacements or then 6 tank replacements?
It's actually, yes, it would be 6, I believe.
Okay, and the total is 6 million, not 5 million, but then here's how much is grant money,
Correct.
which, yes, we have to lay that out initially, but with some recognition of the cash flow timing of that money coming back to us, we do get that back.
Right.
On
So
the grants in particular.
And Heather can answer this for me, is typically when you're in a grant situation and you're waiting for reimbursables, there's a certain amount of, we have a certain amount of give financially. And Heather's nodding, but maybe she want to add to that is, normally if we have, so let's say this was all 100% grant just for easy, and $1 million, and we're progress billing them $1 million at a time. Normally, I'm told by finance folks that if you have the finances to absorb that, you're absorbing that sway until you actually get reimbursed without actually putting money, allocating money in that fund. But Heather, please correct me and
Yeah.
say that more eloquently in finance terms.
I'm going to say it depends. So there's what is it? The Fall Creek ladder. Next, I'm
Mhm.
sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong or saying the title. The fish. Thank you. The Fish Creek ladder. Sorry. Sorry. That project is part grant funded and part debt funded right now. And what we've been doing is we've been not including the debt funding when we're allocating the money to grants, because we know that every quarter at the most, we're putting in a reimbursement and we're getting reimbursed fairly quickly. So if the grants are quick to reimburse, then I would not put that under the bond funding column. If it's slow to be reimbursed, like I mentioned, the FEMA, we cannot fund that in advance and wait 3 years. So that would have to go in the bond funding column, if that kind of makes sense. And so I'm going to say yes and depends.
Yes, and I understand that FEMA takes much longer to reimburse us and to go through that process. But it seems like we have enough grant-funded ones that we can call those out separately. And recognizing then that this 14.6 isn't all of what the district needs to spend to cover those 8 projects. It's ultimately being maybe a year after the projects are completed, might be 5 million that the district needs to spend, as an example, and the remaining 9.6 is grant or something like that.
Director Smalley, I'm gonna agree with you 99% of what you said, and it really depends on the amount and the grant and
Exactly.
and like, are they going to allow us to progress bill?
Yes.
Or do they have to wait till this 3-year project is done?
Right.
Even though they're going to quickly reimburse us after that 3 years. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. It does.
Yep.
And yes, the district needs to have the funding in hand to be able to pay contractors on a timely basis that are required by the contracts that we have with the contractors. We can't point to any of these grants or other agencies to say, oh, well, we have to wait a construction contractor.
Right. We can't do that. And we also don't want to ever put the district in a position where we're waiting for that reimbursement and we're bringing our cash flows at a point where it's not a good fiscal prudent position to be in. So that's why I'm agreeing with you 95%. And
it's gone down to 95 now.
Okay, 99%. But I think you get my point.
I understand the point that you're making is no, not completely to what I'm saying, and I agree with that. I'm using at some point generalities here when I'm throwing the numbers out, but the concept.
I agree with you fully in concept.
Okay. so that we should be calling that out.
I agree.
And
Yeah,
we
thank
have
you.
talked about it before. I don't believe we've ever done it, but having some type of a cash flow projection once projects start.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely needed.
It is needed in order to help us understand when we can start some of the projects possibly that are not part of these 8, because we know money's coming back into the system from, in particular, the grants, but then also FEMA. Okay, so as a concept, I think that staff should incorporate that breakdown of at least grants. And I don't see FEMA listed in any of the above line items in the 1 through 8 priorities. But I believe that the Peavine supply line does have some FEMA money that's likely to be coming back on it. So I don't know how you pulled out the FEMA versus grants. So think about that one. And possibly it's knowing the total that we have in grants allows us to say, well, if it's, as an example, if it's 6 million in grants out of this total number of 14.6, we can expect that to be coming in over a year period. So 500,000 a month, as an example.
Okay. So if I understand you, just to summarize a little bit, is add a column for grant versus what's actually coming out of SLV funding.
Yes.
We also had another comment from Ken about just showing the original budget % complete if there are projects that are underway. Most of these aren't.
Yes.
And then just add perhaps in the report somewhere that we are going to have a cash flow projection mechanism where we're going to show where we are with these as we implement. I will point out that the far columns, we are indicating a yes for both the Peavine and the 5 Mile as FEMA funding.
Right.
We're not listing it explicitly as the original funding source, but you're correct that some portion of it is. So we should probably look at that and at least tease out whatever it is, if it's $1.5 million out of the 3 or 1 or whatever it is. I agree with you, because what I'd like is to see a column that it's, where do we get to 12 million on all these with just district financing, right? Roughly.
Right. Agreed. And knowing that if you expanded the priorities from the original 8 that are here, and we're able to say that it's 12 or 14 that the district would ultimately need to cover with that 12 million, you're not going to start all of those in the first year anyhow. Just from the workflow perspective of getting design, getting contractors on board, getting staff availability to study and evaluate, so that lag has that workflow lag has allowed us or forced us over the years to not spend everything all at once.
Right.
May I add a comment to that?
Sure.
Just for clarification, and just because of questions that I've heard from the board and the public in the past, it is important, though, that we are, when we're looking at the future, that we see this 12 million being spent in the next 3 years, that the plan should be that money will be gone 3 years after we receive it. That is the expectations of the IRS as these are as proposed to be tax exempt bonds.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, then let me ask. The last two loan projects that we have, they were taken out when?
I agree.
2019?
2019 and 21, I want to say. And you're right, we are exceeding the 3 years. If we were to be questioned by the IRS on that, we'd have a lot of answering to do. So, but the whole idea is that when you're taking out the debt, what
Yes.
is the intent?
Right.
And when we're figuring out how we're going to spend that money, how are we coming up with the project dollars? And truly, are we only taking out what we can spend in a 3-year period? That is what the IRS would be looking at and questioning us. And if they were to look at us regarding the 19 and the 21 bonds, those were the questions that they would be asking. Well, in 19, when you took this much out,
Right.
did you really have a 3-year horizon?
Right.
And
Okay.
that is one of the requirements for tax exempt bonds.
Okay. And one final comment that I have, Brian, when I was asking about your criteria on how you develop that, the Huckleberry main line at $1 million. It's my understanding that that line, although it's operating right now, it's operating on patches. And that once we get the easements, we could do that work if we had the money. My gut feel is that one should be moved up into the priorities because of the amount of water that gets transferred through that main line north-south. And when it was out for days or a week after that main line break, Boulder Creek was on use as little water as you can perspective for a while.
I agree. It's, that it has priority. The one issue we're gonna run into is getting every individual has to agree to the
Right.
lease. So
Yes.
it could slow it down, but again, even if you said, well, I know that this committee can't necessarily approve it. Going forward and saying the board approves this list, there's nothing that's gonna keep us from doing this, but I don't
Right.
have a problem. I don't have a problem making it number 9 right now. To kind of put it at the top and saying if all goes according to plan, why not
Right.
knock it out? It's $1 million project.
Yes. When I compare that as far as water volumes to Clear Creek's 5-mile supply line at 6 million,
Yeah.
there's no question in my mind which of the two of those from a water volume usage goes first. So
I agree. I actually wanted to hope for even more, using more metrics to prioritize these, because
yeah.
like you said, population bang for the buck, let's just call it, where you know
Yes.
how much population are you affecting, connections you're affecting with the amount of money you're spending.
Right.
And then, it's also things like the fire protection capabilities, another one, which is huge, of course, in the valley. But we're not that sophisticated yet, sort of on a GIS basis, though I keep sort of pushing in those directions to see if we can develop and enhance that. So we're
Right.
starting to make even more higher level decisions and have them influenced by more data. But for the here and now, I mean, these ones are kind of like, they're low hanging fruit, pretty obvious, when you just click through a few criteria, you can see it's like, yeah, pretty much we got to do these because the grant timelines are pushing it. It's a definite need, but like I said, we'll go ahead and make that one number 9. I don't have a problem with that.
And back to what you're saying about grant funded projects and having those as part of the list of 8. If you include the dollar amount for these grant funded ones, I think that then makes what you are saying inherently easier to see in this table.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay.
I very much agree. No contest there. I think that we put this together and wanted to have the discussion and get the feedback, but
Right.
Rubber hits the road in these meetings is when you realize, yes, this is the kind of feedback we want. So we welcome it.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's all the questions that I have then. Why don't we transition to public comments? Is anybody in the room, physically in the room, want to comment or have questions on this? Go ahead. Speaker.
I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. When I looked at the memo, there was a lot of stale information in there, so I appreciate some of what Heather added about how the 6.9 million from FEMA will be in the next 12 months, not 13 months. That was presented to the board last month. Also, I appreciate the information about the 4.4 million in the existing debt that has not been spent as of 5/31. It seems to me that Heather knows the results as of 6/30. We're near the end of July now. I don't understand why, I appreciate the update to 5/31, but I don't understand why we're not hearing what the unspent bond proceeds is as of June 30th. Shouldn't everyone have the most up-to-date financial information? So I appreciate some of Director Smalley's comments about the DWR tank project. Really is not going to take $5 million of district funds. And there ought to be some sort of cash flow projection to help people understand that. There's also 3.9 million here for Bracken Gray Forest Springs consolidation, and it says unfunded. And then there's another item further down, also about Bracken Gray and Forest Springs, that's unfunded in the amount of 2.5 million. But my understanding from what I've heard from the people who live there is that Bracken Gray has qualified for over $1 million in state funding, and Forest Springs over $2 million. So where it says unfunded here for those projects, is that including any of the money that that Bracken Gray and Forest Springs have already obtained? And I guess one more point that I want to make is that the district started off this fiscal year, or last fiscal year, with a plan for $27 million of capital investment. And the information that we're getting here, I think what was in the board packet as of 4/30 was that 11 and some million had been spent, and now we're hearing that another 2 million was spent in May. So that adds up to 13 and some million. So basically, in 11 months, half of the originally projected 27 million has been spent. So can anyone say something? How could the original estimate be so far off at the start of the year? And is that what we will expect for the coming year as well?
Ryan, do you care to comment on any of this? Or take it as comments? And
I'll just respond to one issue. The Bracken Gray Forest Springs is now funded. That's an artifact from just not correcting that, but 3.9 million is the cost of the project that the district is responsible for at the moment. The Bracken Gray Forest Springs tanks, that is also funded, partially funded by congressionally directed spending. We'll correct that as well. I thought I corrected this in the draft that I reviewed, but apparently not. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Members of the public in the room who want to comment? If not,
Hi, I'm Nicole, Launderberry from Brackenbury. I just wanted to make a comment just in regards to the additional columns. I think those would be helpful, but it would also be helpful to see, for example, like Brackenbury, that the project is a $12 million project and that you guys are moving forward for phase one, so you still see the other phases. And clarity about like what grant money is available versus what the money is that the district is putting in, because it is not clear. And I find that to be the same for the DWR examples for the 5 tanks, and then also for the pump station. It's not clear the contribution, so I think those additional columns would be helpful. And I think the column about what has been already spent versus what is outstanding.
thank you. Any other public in the room want to comment?
Yeah, Sam Linton, Forest Springs. I just had one question. So the total funding that we're can achieve would be 12 million. So I look at the priority list and it gets us like through partially through the Forest Springs Brackenbury consolidation. So how does that work? I mean, if you're kind of partially through that, I don't know if you can give any clarity on that.
Not entirely sure I understand the question. Maybe you,
Well, I was just saying that, so if 12 million is the amount that you can get, and then your top, I think it's 8, or if you go through Forest Springs, Brackenbury consolidation, it's over 12. I'm just wondering, like, so that would take you like partially through the funding of the consolidation that's mentioned here. So how would that work? I mean, would we still be able to start the process? Would we break it down into a smaller piece, or?
that's okay. So a couple things, as was mentioned, some of this is grant funding. So probably what we're going to end up doing is we'll have you might even see more projects on this list that actually total $12 million in what the district can finance and spend. Some of it will be grant funded, but this Forest Springs Brackenbury consolidation, that is the smallest piece that we could push it down to, which is why I asked for additional funds last week, was to make sure that we at least could get that smallest piece through. So if we started it, it's not something that we would go halfway through. It's like we're gonna either take the plunge or not. And in this case, it's up there on the list, meaning that we'll just do it all at once. We have a grant deadline, so we're going forward with it. In fact,
Okay, so
we talked this morning about the schedule to putting it out to bid like as soon as possible.
okay, so it would be the 12 million plus other sources of funds. Because my understanding is the grants come in later, so you still have to fund it now.
You may remember that the Forest Springs Brackenbury, I mean, the whole project is 12 million, but there's really just what we're chipping away at here is the $3.9 million first step. And so that's part of the 12 million that we're talking about in financing that's related to these project lists, which, if that makes sense.
So if I could comment here.
Yes.
It would really be helpful to see a list of the major tasks that have to be done for Forest Springs and Brackenbury, broken down by who has the money, how much, and what sequence this is going to be done in. Because I've been listening for a year now to, oh, so-and-so has a grant, or so-and-so has a grant, and this isn't enough for that, or that's enough for this. What I haven't seen is, these are the 10 things we have to do, or the 5 things we have to do. We need to do this pipeline, we need to do these connections, we need to do these fire hydrants, whatever. I haven't seen a list of And it doesn't have to be down to the, you know, each individual valve and faucet. But I'd really like to see, here's the
Would you like to
5 or 6 or 10 major tasks we have in front of us. And here's what each one of them costs, and here's who's got the money to do it.
Would you like that at the next committee meeting?
That
then?
would be very nice, yes.
Okay, no problem.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Because I'm in a fog on this. She comes and says, we've got this grant, and you say you've got that grant, and I have not seen yet a list of, like I said, who's got what money and what's it for?
All right, thank you. Okay.
A comment against that, or with that, I should say. If one task is dependent on another task,
Oh, yes,
that they be shown what the sequence would be
yes.
and what the expected expense would be per task in sequence,
Yes,
so that you can see the progress
yes,
and the need for progress.
yes, absolutely. Because until we have a project plan like that, the board is incapable really of making
Call the Gantt
intelligent
chart.
decisions.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linton from Forest Springs. I want to thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. My brain glosses over with large numbers, and I like concrete lists, and I love how the San Lorenzo website lists. These are the projects, this is what's going to it. I would love, along with that, to see some general timelines. I know that's a moving target at times. I know I spoke with Garrett at one time, we were guaranteed at Forest Springs water into perpetuity, and I just feel more comfortable knowing where exactly that's coming from.
Mhm.
I also have a concern about, in last meeting, there was mention of a grant writer that had resigned, so I know we were largely dependent on grants, so I'd love a little update on who we have filling that important post. I just wanted to also point out that at Forest Springs, we are considered a regulatory agency, and we are not in compliance if we cannot come up with the funds, and we're not allowed to dip into all our reserves. So that's another consideration. And I know we're not a huge community, but we have some really dedicated members and the people at Brackenbury as well. And I really appreciate that you got this forward into the top 8. I wanted to thank you. I was a little bit worried after the last meeting. I know it got quite heated, and I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for those that consider it a priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other members from the public who wish to comment and who have not?
Hi, Alina Lang, Boulder Creek. I just wanted to thank you, Jeff, for that comment. Like, I rewatched the recording of the meeting on Thursday, and I was also a little lost with all this grant money coming in, and Brackenbury asking, will we just go a couple hundred feet, like we'd be connected, and like I couldn't visualize everything. So I just wanted to show support. That'd be really,
Thank you.
really helpful.
I appreciate that.
Heather, I'm gonna ask you to hold for a minute. You've already had some time up here. I do have some members of the public who are attending remotely who would like to comment, and I want to transition to them. We have several members of the public. DG is all I see. You have the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I like to say I really appreciate the research that's going in and stuff that everybody's saying. Hoping that we could jump the gun on this, that way we don't lose our grants. I'm a part of the Forest Springs community, and I've been watching this go down now for about 2 years. That's how long starting about 2.5 years I've been living in the community. And I mean, we do have a lot of dedicated people here in Forest Springs that are really going gung-ho on this so we can get this project going. The faster we could get this project started, the better, because like I said, we're starting to run on limited time when it comes to funding. Thank you for having another meeting again to bring up all these issues and to hear out the community. just keep moving forward with this. Thank you.
Okay. Danielle? I see that Danielle has taken her hand down. Lori Lusher?
Hi there, it's Lori Lusher. I'm also a part of the Forest Springs community. And I just want to say thank you for the work that you guys are all doing on trying to get this project started. We really do like having clean running water. And we're really looking forward to this project to get started. Thank you so much.
Okay. Danielle?
Unmute. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Thanks so much for taking my comment. I just wanted to express my appreciation to the SLV Water District Board for approving the first phase of this project. You know, I know it's been a long process, but I do want to express my appreciation. Thanks.
Okay. And I do see one other member, Ava.
Hi, my name is Eva. I'm the Forest Springs Board President. I wasn't present in our last meeting due to the water emergencies and repairs that we constantly are up against. So I was so pleased to hear about the progress that we made, and I'm so grateful for the board for moving this forward. Thank you.
Okay. That's all the members of the public that are attending remotely that wish to comment. Does anybody else from the board or from the committee, Jeff or Ken, have any further comment on this or questions?
I think we've covered them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we don't have, we're not in a position to make any motion on this, but I think that the staff, you have quite a number of comments from both the committee and the public on what you've presented to us here in order to be able to revise and either come back or go to the board with it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Appreciate
Okay.
the comments.
Okay. Then we'd like to move on to the next item, and that's the environmental department report. Brian, who's handling that?
I will take this, but it's basically what I just wanted to do is it's in the packet, and I will allow you to ask questions. Chris, who's also worked closely with Carly, is out absent today. But I will do my best to answer any questions.
Okay. All right. Then we'll start. Jeff?
Yes.
What question do you have on the environmental department report?
Okay. The section on conjunctive use.
Yeah, it's in the system.
Do we have an overall plan at this point for conjunctive use? A high level plan.
A couple things are going, they're interconnected, is we're doing a study on the Loch Lomond water at this point. That was what we approved at the last meeting, at the July 18th meeting. So we're going to move ahead with Carollo to finish that study. That dovetails into conjunctive use. At the same time, conjunctive use is not moving ahead rapidly because we want that information. We also are in dialogue with City of Santa Cruz, and there's certain information that we want from them to come through some of the data we have and to start making some more sense of it so that we can push forward with the EIR that we'll need to do in order to fully develop the conjunctive use. So
Sounds very early.
it's moving along. It's a priority, but right now it's like also just making sure that the pieces are getting taken care of as a whole.
Okay. Okay, other question, on the CIP project permitting California Conservation Corps to begin work on Peavine Pipeline June 12th. Did that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
They're out there working as we speak.
Good.
What we're looking at now is trying to put out an RFP to keep them working and do doing the environmental work that's required by FEMA for the 5 mile. And having that, that also the environmental cleared so we can keep the CCC moving, keep that crew under our purview, or however you'd like to put that, but basically keep them moving, doing the trail clearing there as well. So that's the idea.
And I have one other question, which is, we've received a number of grants over time for meter replacement, and I'm the proud owner of a new meter in my front yard. I have no idea what I can do with that meter or what benefit it brings me. So at some point we need to, I don't know if it's on the website or when people get new meters, send them a note on what happened or why.
Thank you for that input, because actually there's a lot you can do with it. You can get an app, you can log on, and you can actually see real time
your water usage down to the minute.
Yeah,
which is great, but I have no idea how or where.
Yeah, it's the Water Smart.
Okay.
EyeOnWater.
Okay.
.com, I think. And you put in your account number or something.
But the point well taken is that it's you didn't get that message, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, a number of years ago we got it.
And if you didn't get it, then I'm assuming that
the whole neighborhood didn't get it. Yeah.
I'm just gonna check with I'll check with our normal sources, how we push that out, to make sure that you are.
Okay. Any other questions, Jeff?
Oh.
Okay. Ken?
I'm fine.
All right. The first question that Jeff was asking on the conjunctive use, the third bullet there, I do see place of use change for Felton water rights. Is that to then allow us to use water throughout the system as we have been doing under the emergency that we've had since the CZU fire? Is that?
Yes, correct. And thanks for bringing that up, Joe, because it is actually, that is another piece that is going on in the background. We're already working with legal to get the place of use changed.
Okay.
So that Felton water can be used district-wide.
Okay. And with changes in leadership, both for yourself, Brian, and City of Santa Cruz, which is where we saw resistance on the prior environmental document for conjunctive use. Do you have a feel for where they stand on our similar in the EIR that we're currently developing?
I guess I'm still in the assessment mode. I know that the willingness has been expressed and appears to be there. Beyond that, I suppose I don't want to jinx the relationship too much by projecting ahead of it, but I also in communication with the community that surrounds that. By that I mean that I'm in touch with all the other water managers in the area.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From Watsonville all the way north. So I do know that there is that sense there. So I'm hopeful, you know, like I said, I mean, I have relationship with Heidi prior to this experience, so we do talk regularly.
Okay. And a feel for when the EIR is going to be complete, because we started that in early 2023.
Yes. And I know, again, that's one where we want to do this study that we're doing now. We want to also digest some of the data that we already have, because one of the things that happens, and this is common I've seen, is you do all these detailed studies and they sit there for a few years and you get a staff change and people think they need to do a study again rather than just going back and combing through the data. We have a very detailed study that we did on the actual, you know, how would I say? I mean, maybe 100 data points per water month, year,
Yes.
however you want
Yes.
it. It goes back to 1969, October 69.
Right.
And so we're looking at how to just make inferences based on that, you know, 40 plus years worth of data. And that's where I'm at now with the city of Santa Cruz, is getting their water year designation so I can take that and crunch
Right.
it into.
So you think we have enough data after 40 years?
Well,
I think that we certainly have a good quantity of data that hasn't been
Yes.
crunched and looked at in pivot tables and over to make some inferences from.
Right. And we don't need, my feel, we don't need more data. We need to conclude that, yes, we can. Or what are the environmental impacts, if there are any, for us using this water conjunctively through the system?
Right, because, and also even, let's say that we're talking about the allocation, that we have this allocation, or like you saying, it's like if we're moving surface water from A to B, et cetera.
Right.
Is how does it break down on a monthly basis, and even more granular than that? Because sometimes it has to be, let's just say monthly for now, is really, oh geez, is it really that? Is it gonna really impact, like you're saying, is it really gonna be an environmental impact? Is it gonna impact the fish ability to hatch and spawn, et cetera? And I know that actually even monthly isn't granular enough for that. There's certain areas where we have to go more, but even as a starting point, we don't have that crunched down yet because we don't have the water designations yet. And that's something we've been waiting on, because City of Santa Cruz uses 5 different designations for a water year, which could change from month to month if that's not too complicated to get everybody's head around. It's just that there's extreme drought, moderate or normal, and then there's wet and very wet. And if you, let's say you were dry all the way to March of a water year, but all of a sudden you had a gusher April, you might switch from one water year type to another during that month, if that makes sense. But anyway, to have those designations, because the city of Santa Cruz manages their whole system based on those designations, and that triggers what they do with their sources. And so since they have that, I agreed to accept that, say, okay, well, let us have them and we'll crunch the numbers with those in mind, see what happens.
Yeah. To
Go
address
ahead.
that potential comment from them in the EIR before we get it.
Yeah, and that's the other one is I've asked for a distillation of the 60-page letter. And also even had it crunched through AI and a number, and I think there was one other way that I had it. And I think the summary of the summary crunched through AI, just to like look at different, just to be able to distill it down and what's it basically saying. And one of them was that we hadn't referenced or asked for certain data. And so I am going to ask for that data and those reports, et cetera, as we go on, so that we have that stack of documents to reference from. Because there's no point in doing an EIR that's just saying, having the same, repeat the cycle, so to speak. That
Right.
makes sense.
I want to be, it's my hope that this EIR is the final step that we need to address this potential for the conjunctive use aspect, which we have been doing for the last 5 years now, which I don't believe there's been any detriments to the environment, but let's be done with the EIR then.
Okay.
Okay. That's all the question or comment I have on this staff monthly report.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any comments from the public on this?
This memo says staff brought the Valley Gardens will serve to the board on June 6th. So, but it also says the CCC is scheduled to begin work on 6/12. So I kind of infer that this memo was written about a month and a half ago, in between June 6th and June 12th. So it doesn't mention that Valley Gardens was brought to the board a second time on July 18th. It says the Bureau of Reclamation something or other will be submitted June 2024. It says the Miller-Maxfield report will be provided on 7/18. Well, that I can say that it was. But some of these things, they just beg questions. Was the Bureau of Reclamation thing done in June? Did the CCC begin work on 6/12? It seems to me that it would, I don't know who's going to be writing these reports in the future, but it seems like it would be worth it for staff to take 5 or 10 minutes before they circulate the memo, just to make sure that at least the information in it is up to date.
So I would comment that just a few minutes ago, we confirmed that the CCC work did start on 6/12.
Yes.
So.
Thank you, George.
Thank you for that comment. Any other comments from the public in the room on the environmental summary report? Any comments from members that are attending remotely? I see none remotely. I see none in the room. I believe that this is the last item on our agenda. With that, yes, we have no unfinished business. With that, I think we can adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh.